Greetings, humans of planet Earth, and welcome back to a Natter of Fact podcast. Today, things are getting a little bit spooky as we delve into our paranormal experiences. Say hello today, Max. How are you doing?
Hello, Christy. What's an opposite? I'm trying to think of something now. I've completely forgotten something. What was it we said before? I don't know. My legs to my table.
My pork to my chop.
Cushion to my chair. My toilet to my paper. Anyway, paranormal. Yeah, this is going to be a whooper of an episode. This.
Where should we start, Max? Do you want to start with one of yours?
I think one of your stories, one of your many experiences, because you've had a lot more experiences with the paranormal than I have.
I know. It's incredible. You wouldn't have really thought somebody like me would have had such experience with the occult.
Guys, just a warning. This is creepy shit. I'm not going to lie. This is creepy.
I am possessed, right now. Let me start. Let's kick things off. So I'm going to take you all back to the 90s, 1993. I didn't really have such a conventional childhood. I grew up in the countryside. I grew up on a farm. Max already knows this because I've told him about 50 times now. So yeah, I grew up on a farm, and I grew up in a farmhouse which was pretty creepy, I'd say. It was 17th century. Yeah, it was just fucking old. The stairs creaked like hell. Everything creaked like hell. And you could tell it was old because it was just made of old sandstone. Yeah, it was fucking creepy. So the reason we lived in this farmhouse is because my dad worked on a nearby pig unit looking after little piggies. And through his work, he got the farmhouse as part of his contract. So, setting the scene. So the farmhouse, it was pretty big. So there's 2 floors, okay? There was an upstairs, there was a downstairs. So as you came in the front door, you had a little sitting room, which my parents used on the left. Straight ahead of you, you could see right through into the kitchen. There was a little room before the kitchen that my parents used as a little kids play area, whatever they called it. And
Creche.
Yeah, creche, basically. And then you can go into the kitchen. Then you had the stairs immediately in front of you as you came in through the front door. The really old, big, creaky stairs. Went up onto a landing. And the upstairs of the house kind of went in an L shape. So My brothers at the time had a room on the left at the start of the L. Then you go around the L. At the bottom of the L, you have my parents' room on the left, the bathroom in the middle, and then you had what we called the spare room on the right.
Spare room.
This spare room, in inverted commas, is where the centre of the activity, happened in this house.
I'm guessing the stairs only creaked when people walked on them. They weren't just constantly creaking with nobody on them.
Well, when you say
welcome to the home.
When you say people walked on them, how do you know ghosts didn't walk on them? There's a very important question I need to ask you before we continue with any sort of ghost stories is, do you believe in ghosts, Max?
I like to. It just, it's how do I describe it? It's a nice thing to think of that when you die, you still get to come back to Earth and haunt your enemies. That's a nice thought that fills me with hope, But I don't know, maybe we do just disappear. I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. Some of the things that we're about to talk about and explain and share are things that we believe are unexplained.
Yeah, exactly. Things that have happened to us that we can't explain. So that's what we're about to share with you all.
What about you? Do you believe in ghosts?
I do. I'd like to think there is a life after death. I'd say some of the things that happened to me in these stories have made me believe more in it. I wouldn't have said I'm particularly religious. I don't really believe in that sort of side of things. I'm more spiritual. I believe that we give off an energy after we die, and that energy continues to exist in some form. That's what I believe. But each to their own. But yes, I do like to say that I believe in ghosts and the paranormal. The first story I'm going to share with you is called The Poltergeist and the Music Box. We're going back to the farm, and the year is 1994, and I am barely 1 year old at this time. In the spare room, or nursery, as it was called at the time, I had a big metal red cot, and this thing was big, and it probably took a lot of effort to climb out of it. And let me tell you, I climbed out of that cot every single night. Every single night I was put in there. For some reason or other, I climbed out of that cot. I fell asleep outside my parents' room door. So I'd climb out of this cot, I'd go up the corridor a little bit, and I'd sleep outside the parents' room door. I'm not exactly 100% sure of the time scale or how long I was in this room for. I don't think it was more than a month, I'd say, if I remember rightly, because this story was told back to me by my mum, because obviously I don't remember any of this. So I am going to be a bit unsure of a few things, but my mum did recount this story to me, and I do believe it. And there's certain reasons I do believe that room had a lot of activity in it, because later in life, I look back and I thought, yeah, something was really weird about that room. So there was this one particular night where my mum said she was putting me to bed, and she had this music box mobile thing. Sometimes kids have like spinny things above their cots or that play little soothing songs. This thing was a hefty old unit, and it was clockwork as well. So she'd have to like wind it up at the back and attach it to the crib. And she did this one night, and she went off to doing mum things at the time, shall we say. So she'd put me down into the crib, settled me down a bit, wound this music box up, and then she'd gone off to do her mum things. And this music box was playing away. It's playing its little soothing song. And she hears this massive crash and thinks the worst. Thinks I've like gone up on the side of the crib and the crib's collapsed or something like that. She comes running and she finds the music box has been thrown with some incredible force against the wall that couldn't have really been done by a kid. Like the wall had a fucking dent in it. Let me tell you, that dent was there for years.
Bloody hell.
Like, there's a dent in the plaster in the wall. And this music box was just there on the floor, damaged. And I was in the corner of my crib, understandably quite upset about something. So I think it was from that night forward, my mum moved the crib and moved me in with my brothers at the other end of the L-shaped upper floor of the house.
Yeah.
But another thing my mum said that I used to do when I was little was in that particular room, I used to follow something with my eyes. So you know how kids are quite imaginative. They have vivid imaginations. I used to follow something with my eyes, like behind her, and she used to like turn around and look around and go, there's nothing there. There's nothing there. There was nothing else in that room. My dad wasn't stood behind her, breathing down her neck going, you putting the kid to bed. Because my dad was at work. But anyway, yeah, so she'd
or was he?
No, he's either at work or downstairs watching the football and doing dad things. What do you think, Max? What do you think of this?
Yeah, that is quite extraordinary. One question I do have is
Fire away.
This red cot that you had, red cot, how tall would you estimate the bars on the side were? So how far did you have to climb, essentially?
I'd say this cot was about 3 or 4 foot tall, perhaps.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, 1 year olds do crawl and occasionally stand and whatnot. But to be able to climb 3 feet or 4 feet, that is unexplainable. That is weird.
And I'm not even into climbing now, so I don't know where all them skills have gone.
And it's not like, like children, they cry because they want attention from their parents. It's not like you wanted that. You didn't climb and then start bashing on your mum and dad's door, give me attention. You went and just slept there. That's weird. That's weird.
Yeah, I didn't even bang on the door. I didn't run into the room and cry or anything like that. I just got out the crib, and something in that room obviously didn't want me there, and I obviously didn't want to be around it either. So we kind of had a hate-hate relationship, me and this entity in this room. But yeah, I'd say ever since that time, I always felt weird in that room. And when I went in when I was a little bit older,
Right.
when I'd grown up a bit and I could walk and run and scream and play outside and all this lot, I remember there was one time I went to read a book in that room, and I sat against the wall
Right.
near the door, and I don't know why I went to read a book in that room. I think I was trying to hide from my mum because she was mad at me about something. I can't remember. So I used to do all sorts of weird things, like I once sucked on a felt tip pen and got all the ink in my mouth.
And you still do that.
And I still,
Come on, take felt tips away from him.
I got all the ink in my mouth, and my mum made me wash my mouth. Was trying to make me wash my mouth out with soap. You know how your parents or your grandparents would say, "Oh, wash your mouth out with soap for swearing." My mum would try and get me to wash my mouth out with soap for sucking on pens. So I think I'd either done something like that, or I'd just been shouted at by my mum, and I was hiding really. So I hid in this room with this book. And I remember just feeling a bit odd, a bit off. And all of a sudden, my nose started just gushing with blood, like bleeding all over this book. Like randomly, unexpectedly, I had a massive nosebleed. So I ran out of this room, left the book on the floor with all the blood on it. So giving the spirit an offering. It's probably not a good idea. Ran out of the room. And I remember as soon as I got out of the room, round the corner into the corridor, the bleeding stopped. So that was weird.
Whoa.
It could have been coincidence.
That is very strange.
That is strange, yeah. Comment down below. What do you reckon of this spare room?
Yeah.
Is it weird? We're going to move on now. We're going to go to Max. And Max, tell us about your paranormal experiences.
I too have come up with a quite haunting title for you.
Ooh.
This is called The Crescent Hauntings, Part 1. Part 1. It's going to be a to be continued. I want to add a bit of suspense to it,
like
you know
that.
what I mean? So yeah, my old house was situated on a street that was a crescent, hence The Crescent Hauntings. There we go. So my lamp in my bedroom used to always flicker on a night. I'd turn it on, and then it would flicker, and then it would stop flickering for a while.
Wow.
It used to always flicker at 3 a.m. Whenever I was awake at 3 a.m., I used to notice that it was flickering. There was one time where I was awake at 2:45, and literally 3 a.m. it started flickering. That was weird. That was the most weird thing with this light. But
I was around 3 a.m.
I know for all the electricians out there, I did change the light bulb. I even changed the plug socket. So I tried many different variables to sort out this flickering light, but nothing worked. So that was very weird. And there are a lot of stories where ghosts and spirits have they sort of play with electricals, you know, sort of turn your lights on and off and that sort of thing. So I thought a little flickering light could be the start of something. So what I did was I filmed my light because I was telling you about it at college.
Yeah, I remember.
Quite a lot. So I decided to film it on my old Samsung phone. Oh, that was a worst quality camera ever.
It's about 0.1 megapixels. Looked like it had just been taken.
Just one straight megapixel.
Yeah. Looked like it had just been recorded on an N64 or something like that, or a Game Boy Color.
Oh dear. So yeah, I filmed my light flickering, and I didn't see anything because I was focusing on the light rather than my phone camera. I was just watching the light, and I was filming. Watched the video back, and something runs across the camera from, I think it was left to right. It just ran across, and I showed you the next day.
I remember.
Check this out. This is really weird.
Yeah.
And you saw it, and you were like, I don't even know how, if it was fake, how you'd be able to even do that. You know what I mean?
It went so fast, and it couldn't have been you.
Yeah.
You didn't have any cats or pets or anything like that, did you? Not that I know of, anyway.
Nope.
So you didn't have any like
No.
little dogs, little cats, or anything that could have run that fast in the background past the light. You physically wouldn't have been able to run that fast. That video, whatever that shadow was that ran past your light, it ran faster than Usain Bolt or any human possibly could. So you couldn't have faked it, could you? You couldn't have faked that at all.
No, there's no way.
No.
And the only way I could describe it would be them, them things in Harry Potter. There's what are they called? Death Eaters? Or something like that.
Dementors
Something
or something.
like that.
Do you know the ones that suck the faces?
Dementors, yeah.
Yeah, Dementors.
Yeah, it's them. Yeah. Sorry for Harry Potter fans if you were offended by that.
I'm not.
Anyway.
Nah, I'm joking. Or am I?
So you see it run by, but I played it in sort of slow motion, and you could see these like sort of jagged, looked like fabric almost, that just sort of swayed by, but really fast. It was really weird.
So out of this shadow, you could make some discernible details, so you could actually see something.
Yeah, not that much. Only like the sort of shapes. I mean, it might just be that it blurred and it looked like that.
Yeah.
But so all I saw was a quick flash of something going by. And then I paused it just as it was going by, and you could see these sort of jagged lines where you could sort of see the curtains behind. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
sort of like when you look through a blind, you can see what's on the other side of the blinds, but you can also see the blinds. It was a bit like that, and it's really, really creepy. So that is something that is unexplained in the Crescent Hauntings Part 1.
I don't think it was you switching the light on and off really quickly either. I don't think it was the fault with the light.
Nah.
Because this shadow was bigger than what the light could have produced, and it looked like it was being projected down onto the light rather. Well, it didn't look like it's being projected from anywhere. It looked like something had gone past.
The weird thing is, this shadow wasn't as shadows are behind the light. It was in front. You could see it clearly blocked out the light for a second.
Yeah.
So it was a figure then, essentially. Instead of a shadow, it's a figure.
God, that's
weird.
Freaky, man. Yeah.
Stay tuned for The Crescent Hauntings Part 2.
We're going to go back to the farm. So we're off back to the farm. So, just to
Stop with the PH.
This is a trademark of a Natter podcast. Back to the farm with Christy. So to add a little bit more context to my stories. So we're going back to this farm that I grew up on as a kid. None of our family lives there now. My parents, they split up in the year 2000, and my mum moved down the road to like a village, to a little rented house there, and we moved with her because the connections to school were better, and it sort of made a bit more sense.
Right, yeah.
So my dad's, he lived in that house until, I think it was 2017 he moved out of there. Because he retired from his job, so he gave the house up. He gave the house back to his employers. But he wasn't on his own. He used to see us every weekend because my mum would be like going out clubbing or whatever, doing what she was doing, blowing off some steam. She'd just come out of a marriage. She'd separated from her dad, so she was like blowing off some steam. And obviously, she'd be like needing a bit of a break from the kids, and we'd go around every weekend. I didn't mind this because it was nice to actually get away somewhere quieter and not have to think about school for a weekend. So my dad used to see us every weekend until, I think it was 2010. 2010 is when I stopped going around as often, and my brother stopped going around as often because we'd both sort of grown up, and I was about to turn 18, had all my mates going off to uni, and I was planning on going off to uni and getting a job in York, so I had stuff to focus on basically. And I think it was around 2010 that my dad's met his now partner. He's still with. So yeah, he's had a good few years where he's been alone during the week. So he might have some more stories. I might talk to him a bit. And I have actually very recently spoken to my brother. It was around Christmas time, and I was speaking to him. And I mentioned this podcast, and I mentioned that we were doing like a paranormal episode, and he was really interested.
Right.
And he said, "Oh, have you shared this experience? Have you shared this?" I was like, "Okay, yeah, I'll share these experiences. So, so he was quite supportive of it. He also gave me a couple more experiences that I've written down that I've forgotten about. So I'm going to do another thing centering around this this spare room. Picture this. It was a few years later since I'd moved into the room with my brothers, so we all had our own space in that room. So this room was just laying dormant. Nobody slept in it. It was just useless. It was at the end of the house, next to the bathroom. Nobody else slept in this room. So for some reason or other, I don't know whether it was like an exchange thing. I don't know whether my brother, something through his school meant that he was exchanging with, like, I don't know. He didn't go to France, but this French guy, this French lad that was around my brother's age, came over and stayed with us. For some reason or other, I can't remember. I was too small at the time to remember. So we'd put him in the spare room, or my parents put him in the spare room. And at the time, I was little. I didn't really know about the paranormal, or I wasn't really clued up on the spare room. So I wasn't immediately thinking, oh, this guy's going to get haunted and all this.
You're too busy sucking felt tips.
I was too busy sucking felt tips, and I was too busy playing on my city car mat. Did you have a city car mat? I'm getting sidetracked again.
Yes, I did. Oh, I loved that. Yeah.
So
oh,
good.
did you get the inflatable ones? You get like inflatable jungle and stuff like that.
I don't think I did.
Ah, that was the upgrade version.
It was, wasn't it? You had the fucking Premier City car mat, you know. So anyway, back to the story. You're getting fucking sidetracked, man. So this French guy, this poor lad, he'd come over to England for some reason and was staying with us for 2 weeks. And for the entire 2 weeks, he stayed in this spare room. He seemed all right. For what English he knew, he was pretty good at English, actually. For what English he knew, he was a pretty nice chap. Right. And he quite enjoyed his time on the farm in England. And towards the end of his stay, he started to get a bit ill and he looked really tired and he didn't sleep much. So my parents were kind of like, what's going on? What's wrong? You know, kind of trying to find out what was going on. He obviously didn't have coronavirus because this was, I think it was 1997 or 1998. So it probably didn't really exist in the form it does now. So my parents asked him what was wrong. And he said that he had like constant nightmares staying in that room of being chased around the house, you know, the farmhouse, by this figure, this black figure with red eyes. In his nightmares, which constantly just chase him around. He'd be screaming, trying to hide everywhere. This figure would just find him wherever he hid in this house. He also described it as not sleep paralysis, but waking up or being half awake. It might have been sleep paralysis, but sort of being half awake and seeing this figure looming over him. So obviously this guy didn't sleep, but he also didn't like complain or scream or anything like that. He kept it all to himself until the last couple of days of his stay. And he was complaining that he had like a fever, he felt ill. So my parents decided to, I think they might have taken him down to the doctors or something in the next morning. And he got like a note to say he was fit to fly, and he went home. He went back to France, and without a further word, that was that.
Wow.
We just found it really creepy that he had incessant nightmares of some creepy figure chasing him around with glowing red eyes. So it's strange. What do you reckon to that, man?
I want to know because he said he was French and his English was quite good.
Yeah.
Do you know some exact wording of how he phrased black figure with red eyes chasing him, nightmares, stuff like that? Because it's not really words you'd use before you come to England, is it? Nightmares, black figure, red eyes. Really. You know what I mean? I'm wondering how he'd convey that.
Yeah.
That'd be interesting.
My memory of his exact words were quite hazy because I was, obviously because it was the late 90s, I was quite small at the time. I was sort of milling around in the kitchen where they were talking to him. Yeah, I can't really remember the exact words he used, but I think it was my mum that told me back later on in the later years that he'd said these things. Yeah. So I might ask her again. I might actually find out. But yeah, that's quite an interesting question. It's a good question, actually.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to see what he said. But he must have said something along those lines for your mum to be able to understand everything. But yeah, that's quite creepy. That is very creepy.
It is, isn't it? I mean, yeah, it's so far everything's centered around that room in that house, and I sort of wonder now what goes on in there. And
maybe this thing is pissed off with you because you keep calling it a spare room, and it's like, no,
maybe
it's my room.
Maybe it was like the Grand Temple or
ooh.
something like this. I mean, that house wasn't exactly. It wasn't one massive house. It probably was at one time, but it had been split in half. So my dad had a neighbour on the other side, and his missus, who the neighbour worked at the pig farm with my dad, and so we did have neighbours. And later on, I remember that part of the corridor was bricked off, and the neighbours were given the room because they'd had kids fairly recently around that time, so they'd been given that room because they needed more space. So I remember going to help my dad move out of that house, and I was like, "Ha ha, you've got the spare room now, kid." And I could actually hear through the walls like the kid crying, because I think I'd stayed over, and I went to use the bathroom.
God.
I could hear the kid crying in that room. I was like, "Uh-oh, that's not good."
Oh wow!
I know, it's bad, isn't it?
Wow. So it was very centered around that room, wasn't it?
It was.
Wow.
And my brother said,
even when you blocked it off, it didn't come into your house at all. That's mad. Wow.
And my brother actually said to me later on, he had some sort of theory about it. And this is Dom. This is the brother which is closer in age to me. I've two brothers, Dom and Seb. Seb's the eldest. He wasn't too involved in all of this because obviously he turned 18 on 16 first and went off and had his life and all that. So Dom told me this about the spare room. He said that it's quite possible back when the house was built that there was like an older man, an older farmer who was locked in that room because they didn't quite understand mental health back then. He could have had dementia. He could have had a condition which made him appear crazy to the people back then. Because obviously it might have been the 17th century, 18th century that this house was built. So he reckons that there was somebody locked in that room and he was just left to die because they thought he was crazy. So that's why he thinks there's such a malevolent presence in there. But it could have been anything. It could have been somebody performing a ritual, or it could have been a satanic farmer or something like that. I don't know. You know, you never know, do you?
So do you reckon then, because we only ever hear of like ghosts and spirits that move things, that toy with things, try and get our attention basically. Do you think they're all evil?
I don't.
Do you think it's only the ghosts of tormented people?
I don't think all spirits are evil. I believe some of them might not have died in particularly nice ways, but I think some of them are our ancestors. There could be just nice people who they might have some unfinished business, but they're sort of not watching over you, but sort of reminding you that they're there and saying that, hey, I'm around. I haven't quite moved on yet, but you know, I'm not going to cause you any harm. They might move things or slam doors, not slam doors, but shut doors, or do unexplainable things in the house, but they're not causing you any harm. So I don't think all spirits are evil. And I don't think human spirits are naturally evil. I think that demons are a thing. And I think that they come into play a little bit. They might manifest themselves in human spirits and do horrible things. I don't know. It's all quite complex, isn't it, Max? In the world of ghosts.
It is very complex. Yeah. There's no this is a good ghost, this is a bad ghost, this is a bad ghost, a demon. Are they the same thing essentially? You know, there's all these terms that get thrown around and whatnot. So it'd be, if you know anything about ghosts and demons and the sort of separation between a bad ghost and a demon, please do comment. We'd be very interested to know and apply context to our own personal experiences as well. That'd be quite cool.
I mean, if you're a priest, a demonologist, or just anyone who sort of believes in this stuff, feel free to leave us a comment. Let us know what you think, and we'd be really, really keen to hear, even about your own experiences as well.
We're going to do a Paranormal 2, aren't we? Where we do a second episode of Paranormal Experiences. So we may read your comments out, so be warned. So, Max, why don't we do part 2
of the Crescent haunting, mate.
The Crescent Hauntings Part 2. So yeah, this one isn't necessarily directly related to the last one because I was in a different bedroom at this time. So I didn't have my flickering light anymore. Weirdly, it didn't flicker in the other room. So maybe it's a bit like your spare room thingamajig, where it's confined to one space of the house. But what did happen to me in this room was probably the most disturbing thing to have ever happened to me in my life. Sleep paralysis. We briefly touched up on it.
Yeah, brushed
with
over
the little French guy. Did he have a name? I'm just calling him Little French Guy.
I don't actually know his name. I just know him as the French guy. So.
We'll call him Little French Guy then.
So we'll call him the French guy, yeah. The little French guy.
Now, what happened with my sleep paralysis? I've no idea what time it was. I was just happily asleep. Then all of a sudden, I wasn't happy and I was half asleep. So basically, I was lying on my front and my head was facing left, so I could see the rest of my room. And what I saw in the doorway of my room, the door was closed, it was just in front of the door, was this black figure, whether it was a woman in a black veil or a big man in a big black cloak. I've no idea, couldn't really see that clearly about it. I just knew it was there. And that made me absolutely terrified because sleep paralysis, obviously there's the paralysis part where you can't move at all. You're just a sitting duck, you know, you're lying there and you can't move. And so what I did was I tried to scream. But the thing with sleep paralysis is that you're half awake and you're half asleep, meaning that sometimes what happens is you start seeing the things that are in your dream in reality.
Yeah.
If you get what I mean. So when I screamed for help, I was actually screaming in my dream. That's
Jesus.
I can remember it very clearly reverberating around me. I don't know if that's is that a sort of reverberating? Is that it echoed basically. It echoed.
Oh, okay. Right, okay. Yeah.
Echoed around me.
Yeah.
So that's how I knew I was shouting in the dream, because the room I was in was not that spacious to create an echo like that. I did some research online to find out what sleep paralysis is. And there are some stories that say it's a little demon that sits on your back, which is very creepy because when you experience sleep paralysis, you do feel like there's something on your back stopping you from moving, from getting up.
Yeah.
So that doesn't help. The other thing that is, it's a minority in terms of issues, but the thing that I find really weird is how I was sleeping on my front. I mean, my fiance SJ, you know, we've been sleeping in the same bed for years now, and she's never once seen me sleep on my front. So why on this night of all nights was I on my front? Did something move me into that position? That's a troubling thought I have.
Yeah.
What do you think to that? You know a bit of science with this, don't you?
I'd say so. I wouldn't necessarily say my research is massively in depth. It's more that I sat for a few minutes on the toilet and Googled it. So Google, the magic search engine. So I sort of looked up on my phone. I was quite curious one day about sleep paralysis. I don't know why I was looking it up. I think it was some story I'd watched on YouTube.
People normally read the back of a shampoo bottle, but yeah.
Well, yeah, I read about sleep paralysis. I'm weird like that. So I'd Googled sleep paralysis, and some interesting little tidbits of science had come up, and they'd said that people had done research into it, and that they believe that there's a chemical released by your brain into your body which stops you moving your muscles. Right. So obviously some people's dreams, they're very active. They go skiing, they go boxing or whatever you do in your dreams. And and it stops your body from acting out what you're doing in your dream. So, say if you're in a boxing match, it'd stop you punching yourself in the face. Obviously, it prevents you from being injured. So this chemical gets pumped into your body, and you can't move. But it doesn't prevent your brain from waking up. So they were saying that the people who are in this state are in sort of a semi-awake state where the brain hasn't quite released the chemical from the muscles. So your muscles are all frozen solid. You can't move. And obviously a lot of people say they're on the chest when they're in sleep paralysis. And you can sort of say that if you're on your chest, you will feel pressure on your chest because your body weight is bearing down on your lungs. So you might feel a bit breathless and you can't scream, you can't move, obviously because this chemical's still coursing through your veins. So you're sort of rigid there in the bed. Not like rigid as in rigor mortis rigid, but you are frozen. You know, people often complain that they can't move in sleep paralysis. So yeah, that does sort of explain a little bit about why this might happen.
One of the weird things I've found when researching the little demon on your back is that it's quite common to visualize a black cloaked figure in, I'm going to say a doorway. I'm not too sure if it specifically mentioned a doorway, but it certainly said that most people who have experienced sleep paralysis visualize a black cloaked figure. So if you've experienced sleep paralysis, get in touch, leave a comment and tell us if you saw a black cloaked figure, because that's the only part of this whole sleep paralysis that is failed to be explained with science. So
the visualizations are a big part of it that haven't been explained and didn't really get covered in the little research that I did. I mean, maybe if I dig deeper into it, I might find something on that, but we don't know. We haven't looked this up, have we?
It's fair enough. It's fair enough to just go, oh, well, it's just because you're dreaming. Well, if that's the case, how come you don't see other things like unicorns or a nice lion? Why is it always a black cloaked figure?
A nice lion or lion?
Either one. They both sound pleasant.
A nice lion. That's wishful thinking, mate.
Oh dear.
Yeah, very strange, man. I mean, sometimes these sort of experiences can be quite life changing, and they can be really terrifying. People can get PTSD. They can be really traumatized by sleep paralysis. I mean, you've been. I don't know. How have you managed to cope with it, man?
Well, I mean, I just try not to think about it. I did when I bought a Fitbit, and I was really intrigued because that measures your heart rate when you go to sleep. And I really kind of wanted sleep paralysis to happen again, just so I could see what my heart rate would do or what kind of sleep it would measure. Because that would be quite interesting science to learn. Or would my Fitbit just crash and burn? I don't know.
Yeah, it would be interesting to know what a Fitbit would say about this whole thing and what it'd measure. So, very interesting stuff, man.
I'll tell you a very interesting thing though. That's quite funny. This sleep paralysis that happened to me was on the night I first watched Paranormal Activity.
Oh really?
Yeah, so it was quite traumatizing. But I've seen all of the Paranormal Activities, and I am one of the few people that actually really enjoy them. So yeah, there we are.
I mean, it's not directly related to your story, but I had an experience once where I'd watched. Is it The Conjuring, where there's a demon that jumps out of the wardrobe onto somebody and flattens them to the floor, and then it like disappears or something? I'd watched that film. I think it was around the time I first met Nicole, and I'd watched this film, The Conjuring, and I was living in the little room in York at the time when I first moved to York, and around 3 a.m, I'd looked at the clock after it had happened, but part of the wardrobe collapsed and fell onto the bed and woke me up. So
oh my God.
I'd obviously seen this demon jump out the wardrobe in The Conjuring, and the wardrobe had just collapsed that very night. And I looked at the clock, it was around 3 a.m. I was like, yay, the wardrobe demon from the films followed me. We're going back to the farm. Back to the farm. Quite a distinctive story from my childhood was one that I call The Phantom Child.
The Phantom Child.
Those of us who have siblings understand that siblings like to wind us up. They like to tell us little stories, scare us. You understand that, don't you, Max?
Yeah, shout out to Stuart and Zoe. Shout out to you guys. Yep, you wind me up. Yep, shout out to you.
Shout out to Dom and Seb. He used to tease me like fuck, but anyway, here we are. I think it was Seb, actually, who told me that there was a little girl buried under the stairs in the farmhouse.
Wow.
Now, to add a little bit of gravity to this little wives' tale story, whatever it was, I looked in that little cupboard under the stairs.
Yeah.
And the actual floor looked like it was made of dirt. And I don't know whether it was concrete or it wasn't solid, it was dusty. And I thought, actually, there could be something buried under here. I don't know if it's a little girl. I don't know if it's treasure. I don't know. It added a bit of gravity to that tale. So, linking to this, I'm going to tell a little story about when our auntie used to babysit for us.
Right.
And obviously, parents like to go out and party when they're a bit younger and get away from the kids for a little bit and, do parent things. So, my mum and my dad were both out one night and my auntie was babysitting for us. And she'd put us all to bed, got us all settled. We were all in the same room at this point. So, it didn't take much, get us all to bed. We were all right, kids. We went to sleep fairly quickly. We didn't do like whispers or anything like that. My brother didn't play his Game Boy under the covers or anything like that till 4 a.m. Or he might have done, I don't know. I can't remember. I was asleep. So obviously this is coming from my mum, which had also, I think at the time, had been told by my auntie to my mum. She'd said that she used to hear footsteps, like little pit patter of footsteps. These footsteps were too heavy to be like a rat or a mouse or an animal that had got into the floor somehow. It sounded human. Sounded like a human child running about. Well, the room above where she was sat in a little kid's toy room, whatever it was, which is directly below my parents' room. So in my parents' room, she could hear little footsteps. So I'm going to go and check if my nephews are still in bed. So she went up the creaky stairs as quiet as she could, saw that my parents' room door was closed, saw that our room was still in darkness. She went to have a look in there first. We were all asleep, believe it or not. So she went to my parents' room, opened the door. There was nobody in there. The light was off. So she closed the door, went back downstairs, sat back downstairs again in the same position, and probably about 20, 30 minutes later, she heard the pitter-patter again. She thought, okay, one of the nephews is playing a very clever trick on me. So she went up the stairs as fast as she could, saw our room was still in darkness. We were all asleep. The parents' room door was still shut, and she freaked out. So she went back downstairs. 30 minutes later, like clockwork, she heard the noise again. So she didn't go and check because she was shitting herself at this point. So she just stayed downstairs, read a book, watched TV, whatever she was doing. And eventually, my mum and my dad came home. Understandably, my auntie wasn't too keen about staying over the night. So she got a taxi back to where she lived because she didn't want to stay over with this creepy noise upstairs. And my mum was obviously a bit confused as to why. So she told my mum about the story. And my mum sort of freaked out a little bit because she'd had an experience. Don't know whether it was earlier the same year or, I don't know, just earlier in the 90s. For some reason, she was doing like some sort of family portrait in her room, in the parents' bedroom. And she had us all lined up. We were all dressed up smart. And I don't know whether it was like a christening or we were doing some big family dinner or event or I don't know. I had a big family, so it could have been anything really. So we were all lined up and my mum had, I think it was like an old Polaroid camera. No, it wasn't a Polaroid because it wasn't an instant photo. It was one of the old cameras where you'd put a barrel of film in and it wasn't like a wind-up one. It was like a semi-automatic. You had to send it off to be developed, so you couldn't have instant, pictures at the time. So we were all lined up, and she'd taken the photo, and she thought nothing of it at the time. Just a nice little picture of her boys dressed up, all smart. And she a few months later, she got all the films developed that she'd sort of used over those months, and this photo, I think it's still in one of my dad's photo albums, and I
Yeah.
did mention it to my brother recently as well, and he said about it that photo might still exist.
Right.
So I need to sort of try and track that down and see if it exists. But she'd got this photo of us all dressed smart in that room, and she said there was like an outline, like a very vague outline of a fourth child. Her
Wow.
blood ran cold, obviously, because she thought, wait a minute, my sister has told me about this phantom child which was running about in this room. So it sort of, for her, added a lot of gravity to this story. So I didn't particularly have any run-ins with the phantom child, but my brother did describe, and this is one of the stories he reminded me about, did describe there was one night he was watching TV in the living room, which was below our room at the time. So the living room was that room where my parents spent a lot of time and watched TV in there, and my dad watched football in there. But he was watching TV, I think it was about 2-3 in the morning, and I don't think I was at my dad's that weekend, because at this time they'd split up. He was in the living room, he was watching TV in the early hours, and he heard something jump off one of the beds in the room above and run out of the room. And it was a distinct, like a kid dropping off the bed, and he heard like distinct footsteps running up the corridor. So I think he heard whatever that was, whatever that phantom child was in that room playing on one of the beds. So freaky stuff, man. I mean, what do you reckon? What do you reckon that could have been?
And you never went digging to see what was under there.
Oh no!
You never.
Oh no! No.
Never disturb a grave.
Yeah, mainly because my dad probably would have clattered me for it, and if I'd damaged the house in any sort of way, he would have been really, really angry. So no, I never went digging because I just didn't dare. I was more scared of my dad than I was scared of any dead person coming after me. So
fair enough. Yeah, that's a very creepy story, and how it all adds up as well. Sort of makes the unexplained explained in a way that is still unexplained. Well, I've got one more story to share that also has a cool name. This one is called The Shower Scream.
The Shower Scream.
Yeah, I don't know why it's called that. It's got nothing to do with a shower. I just wanted to make a pun and for it to sound haunting.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, it's just because it's mainly in the bathroom. It's the bathroom area of this flat. Yeah. It's a current haunting, if you like.
A modern day haunting.
Right as we speak. Yeah, 21st century haunting. Yeah. Keeps turning my Bluetooth on and off. No, so in the bathroom next to the toilet, we've got these shells, these multicolored shells that SJ has painted, and they are very weighty shells. And it's like a little, a mobile, bit like that, but made out of shells.
Wind chime.
Yeah. And occasionally I've noticed or heard when I'm sat in the living room or any other room apart from the bathroom, I'll just hear them start clanging, and I go check it out, and the shells are not like, mentally swinging, they're gently moving and clanging together. Now, yes, you could just say, oh, it's a draft or whatever, but explain this. I have gone up to those shells with both my hands and wafted my hands, which creates, if you just waft your face with both your hands, I'm doing that right now, so if you hear any weird sounds, it's just that. It generates enough air movement, air current or whatever, to give you what would essentially be a breeze. There's nothing going to be, there's no crazy breezes going on in this flat. And I do that near the shells, and they don't even move, not a tiny bit at all. They do not even move when I waft my hands in front of them. Yeah. So I don't know what is causing them to move like they do. Right. So that's a bit weird. That freaks me out every time. If it happens again, I'll film it. But the problem is, and I've thought about this, is if I just go film them moving, everyone's just going to say, oh, I moved them myself. It's one of the things you got to experience to believe.
Yeah.
So that's a bit weird, and it sort of connects to this other thing that happens, which happens every night, really. It depends how late I'm awake. But if I'm up late one night, SJ's gone to bed, and I get up and I turn all the lights off, as you do before you go to bed, and I'm walking down the hallway, the corridor. It's a really small corridor. And there's the wall between the bathroom and the bedroom. The bedroom door is closed, so you can just see the wall of the bathroom. And it sticks out a little bit. It's got a little skirting board, little area. Just sticks out a little bit. And every time I turn the lights off and I'm walking down there, I always feel like I'm going to trip over something that's standing just in front of that. It's a little thing, only comes up to about your knees, but I always feel like I'm going to trip over it. And you'd think, I've been living here nearly 2 years now.
Yeah.
You'd think I'd be used to that, like I'm used to everything else when it's in the dark. I can happily walk around most of the flat in the dark, happily, without bumping into anything. But always there, I always feel like I'm going to trip over something.
Oh,
and
wow.
It's weird. So what I've done is I've put 2 and 2 together. Maybe I've got 5, maybe I've got 4. But what's happened is, what I think is that I think this is a child.
Oh, okay.
Right. Because it comes up to your knee. I'm always going to trip over it. And the shells are like a little mobile that children like to play with. So maybe that's why that keeps moving. And it's around the bathroom area.
Ah, okay. So you sort of connected the dots a little bit there.
Yeah.
In terms of that. Yeah.
So that's very weird. And I'll keep you updated on anything else that happens.
Yeah.
So far, that's all I've got. What do you think to that?
So you say you think it's a child. So when you say you try and avoid something in the corridor, do you say it's in your peripheral vision, or do you physically see this thing in front of you, or is it just in the corner of your eye, did you say?
Corner of my eye, I'd say, so peripheral.
Right, okay.
It's just always, when you feel like you're going to trip over something, then you look and then you realise there's nothing there. It's that every time, which is weird.
Do you have a fire extinguisher in your flat? Is it like a big fire do you have any fire extinguisher in your flat?
We do have one.
Right.
We do. It's a tiny one that's next to the front door, so it's pretty much opposite where the thing that I keep tripping over is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thinking of your flat, you don't have any coats on that side, and you don't usually keep shoes on that side, do you? So your coats and your shoes are on the other side.
No, that is just,
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Strange.
And I got to the point where I wanted to see if SJ saw it as well.
Right.
So I turned all the lights off in the flat, and I got her to stand where I stand, and I told her to look towards the kitchen, because when I'm walking, I'm always looking towards the kitchen.
Yeah.
That lets in a tiny little bit of light, so I always head towards there, so I know that I'm going straight on. She was looking, and she said that she kind of saw something as well.
All right.
So it's not just me.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the layout of your flat, and I can't really think of anything that sticks out that much, or that's be as significant as something standing there.
I remember I once where the thing was standing, what I did was I actually just went to put my foot through it just to check if there's anything actually physical there.
All right, okay, yeah.
And there was nothing there. My foot just went straight through it. Nothing there.
That's mind-boggling.
So there's nothing that could cause that to be there. It gets me every night.
Wow.
Every night.
Strange.
And I can't film it either because it's in the bloody dark.
Yeah, and
another thing I can't bloody film.
You don't have any cats or dogs or anything like
that. They're learning.
Yeah.
No, not allowed pets. Not allowed pets here.
Can't be a pet either. Yeah, I can't explain that really. That's a bit, that's racking on my brain a little bit,
Although, to be fair, if I did have a pet, they'd probably be traumatized as to why a foot went all the way through their body. It's a very strange one, but I'll keep you updated.
Yeah, please do.
Paranormal too.
That's awesome. Well, it's not awesome for you. You've got to be scared of this thing every night, but
oh dear.
For one last time for this episode, we're going to go back to the farm. I mean, I've got a few more experiences on this farm that I could share with you, but I'm going to save them for Paranormal too, obviously, because we need some content. So this one's actually a fairly... we've already done an hour. This one's actually a fairly significant and recent experience. I won't say it's that recent. I'd say,
Oh, well.
what year were we in at this time? I think it's around 2006, 2007. So I can't maths, so I can't think of what age I was back then. But yeah, it was around 2007, 2006. And my dad, obviously, because he was a farmer, he got up at the crack of dawn. He'd be up at 4 o'clock in the morning nearly every day. We were used to him. If we stayed with him on a weekend, we were used to him getting up at the early hours of the morning and going off to tend to his pigs or do whatever he did. So it wasn't unusual to hear noises throughout the night of people walking about. Or my dad walking about, or my brother coming to bed at 5 in the morning because he stayed up all night. So this particular night, I remember I was just vividly awake. You know, when you're just awake, you can't go back to sleep for some reason. You can't sleep. And I think it was about 2:45 in the morning. I looked at the little clock next to my bed and I thought, 2:45 in the morning. I looked over to my brother's bed. He was in bed as well. And recently I have spoke to my brother about this experience, and he said he vividly remembers this experience as well. He was also awake, and we heard what we heard. I can't really say anything more about this. We were both awake. I didn't know he was awake at the time until I checked later on in the story. But we'd heard my dad's bedroom door open. This is around 2:45 in the morning, and we thought nothing of it because obviously my dad might have got up to go to the toilet or whatever. I don't know, whatever he was doing. My dad's bedroom door. It was quite a significant sounding door. Okay, so there'd be a clunk of this door handle turning and a little creak of the hinges. And this is what we heard. We heard the door opening, the little creak of the hinges, and we heard heavy adult footsteps. Now, not children's footsteps, not animal footsteps. My dad walking. So
Phantom Child's having a little rest at this moment.
yeah, just banging the feet like, you're not giving me attention. So we heard heavy adult footsteps creaking on the floorboards. They went into the bathroom, and we heard the pull cords. You know how bathroom pull cords, all of them have a distinct sound, like dun dun. You know what I mean? Yeah. So we heard the bathroom pull cord go on, and this one was loud. It was like a big dun dun, and then that was it. The silence. The silence was deafening. You know when somebody says the silence is deafening, and you can feel the thick tension in the air. You could have cut that silence with a knife, because I was just laid in bed thinking, so is anything else going to happen? I was on the edge of my seat waiting for piss to fall in the toilet or a tap to go on or something.
The entertainment of Christy's childhood.
Just anything. Or a cow outside to moo or something. I don't know. But nothing happened. This silence was deafening. You could hear the silence.
6 seasons in a movie.
Oh, yeah. What's your favorite scary movie? We got to the point where this silence was just overwhelming. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to go check, because at this point I presumed, and my brother said he presumed, that my dad was just stood in the doorway of the bathroom motionless with his hand on the pull cord, but he wasn't. I looked around the edge of the door, peeped into the corridor, down into the bathroom. Bathroom was in darkness. My dad's bedroom door was completely shut, and all the lights were off. So I started shitting myself because I knew exactly what I'd heard. So I turned around to my brother and looked at him at his bed to see if he was awake, and he was awake. And I said, Dom, did you hear that?
Yeah.
He was like, yeah. And that was it. We didn't say much else about it that night. We just both went back to bed. And the freaky thing is, I didn't sleep the rest of that night. And I heard the exact same pattern of noises happen again about an hour later. But this was actually my dad getting up to get ready to go to work, because it was about 4 in the morning. So, yeah, I checked as well. You know, I sort of thought, I'll have a little peek and make sure it's actually my dad this time. And it was. You know, the bathroom door had been shut, the light was on, his bedroom door was open, so he'd obviously actually got up this time. But that first time, I just can't explain it. And the sounds were so distinct, they couldn't have been a neighbour, they couldn't have been a dream, because we were both awake, we both heard it. So, I mean, how do you explain it, Max?
Yeah.
What do you reckon, man?
That's crazy. That is really weird to hear such distinct sounds and then see nothing. I can't even explain how I'd feel if that happened to me.
Oh, it's strange, isn't it?
That
It's so weird. It's freaking me out thinking about it, to be honest. It's like, it was just so vivid. So vivid.
Was there ever a point when you were at the farm, you'd had some guests around for dinner, and the phantom child's running around, the other guy's going to the toilet, little French guys in the spare room getting, creeped out, and the guests are like sitting there shitting themselves, and you're just happily eating your dinner, and they're going, "What was that?" And it's like, "It's probably just a phantom. It's fine."
Like Scary Movie 2.
It doesn't like it when you eat, when you leave your veg. Eat your greens or you're going to get sacrificed,
Mate, we weren't Satanists. I mean, the previous occupants could have been. Well, you never know. No, thinking about that question, it's quite interesting because later on, a few years later, and quite a few years later, when we were all over 18 and my parents had split up and my dad had his partner at the time. Yeah. We had a big family party, whatever it was, where me, my brothers, my dad's partner's kids came up from Cheltenham, and we all had like this massive shindig at his house. And I think it was a year before he moved out, so we were sort of saying goodbye to the farm and all this lot. But I just remember, for some reason, my dad had moved bedrooms, so he'd moved from his old room into where me and my brother used to sleep because we didn't go over as often. So he'd made his bedroom into a spare room, and then the spare room I think had been bricked off at this time, so he had his bedroom as a spare room. And I remember that night I slept in that room, and I was shitting myself because I thought the phantom child was going to come and jump on the bed or run about in the night, but no, nothing happened. And I was pretty drunk that night as well. So yeah, it could have been alcohol if something did happen, but spirits were certainly haunting me that night, let me tell you.
Oh dear. Just imagine it now, your dad hearing voices coming from that room, one of which was a low pitched voice going, "I love you, man. I love you. You're like a brother to me, man."
What a drunk ghost. Just sipping on some whiskey in the night. It's like your 18th when we're like, "Ooh, the spirits are getting me drunk" in Gibson's.
That wasn't a true haunting. That was just me wobbling the table.
No, my dad heard a voice during the night saying, "Give me some more whiskey. Pour me another glass, Dad." We're gonna wrap this up nicely for you folks, like a present. We're gonna say our goodbyes, and hopefully you'll sleep soundly tonight, knowing that there's no ghosties and ghoulies.
All the ghosts are in our bloody houses.
Yeah, all the ghosts are in our bloody houses.
All the ghosts are at the farm.
Yeah, they're all at the farm in the spare room with a French guy. And on that bombshell, we wish you a farewell and sleep tight. Thanks for watching our video, and if you want to stay notified on future releases, don't forget to subscribe to the official A Natter of Fact YouTube channel, and more importantly, turn on those notifications.